So, without further ado, Glenn Fowler, the gentleman over to my right, candidate, California State Auditor's Office. We met 4 years ago, something like that, at this really, really terrible place in California called Monterey. Definitely one of the worst places in the world. I'm kidding. It's one, anybody who hasn't been there yet, it's glorious. We were at a conference, the Midwest Pacific Association of Colleges and Employers. Glenn were you the president at that time?
Maybe incoming, something like that.
Incoming president or something like that. And they've since kicked you out and have nothing to do with you? Is that, I'm just
Pretty
kidding.
much.
So Glenn works for, I apologize, the government. And the reason I wanted to have Glenn, in addition to having a little bit of track history with him and having seen him speak, to come and speak, is that I think a lot of us in the college recruiting space forget about the fact that it isn't just corporations that are doing this hiring, it's also government. And government has a whole set of challenges that those of us on the corporate side just don't. In addition to budget cutbacks, limited flexibility and compensation, it's not often as sexy to work for the government. There's certainly some government jobs that are, but the government really, federal, state, and local, has some really interesting challenges and also some really great opportunities. So Glenn is going to talk with us today about how government agencies are able to recruit the best and the brightest. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Just the clicker up here. Good morning, everybody. So thanks, Stephen, for the non-sexy introduction. I appreciate that. Yeah, let's invite the government guys so we can give them a hard time. All right, let's see if we get this right. Glenn Fowler. I manage recruiting and training for the California State Auditor's Office. Said hello to a couple of you as you're coming in. You heard the word auditor. You're like, wait a minute, I paid my taxes. I'm good to go. Just to assure everybody, we don't do taxes. We're the good guys. We're actually the problem solvers for the legislature, so we work on your behalf. So everybody take a deep breath. You're fine. You're in good company. A little bit about me. Stephen's right. I have a history with the Mountain Pacific Association of Colleges and Employers, past president for that group. I'm currently chair of the National State Auditor Association Training Committee. I serve on their Human Resources Committee. And I'm really excited. I'm joining the NACE board as of July. So I'm just tickled about this next slide. A couple months ago, I got an email from LinkedIn congratulating me that I'm among the top 5% of the folks viewed on LinkedIn. So I thought that was kind of cool, especially being here and all. So yay, my people. Actually, I say the word my people because I'm also with you guys, because normally I'm with auditors in the office all day, so I'm here with other recruiters and such. I love it. It's our boot camp, right? How can government hire talent? First thing, they've got to be strategic about it. Most agencies, departments, yes, they've got HR units, they've got marketing divisions. Many don't actually have a recruiting function, or if they do, they're rotating folks through that recruiting function. And you really have to have that continuity, as all of us know, because really, at the end of the day, it's about relationships and building rapport with those schools, those professors, and those programs. So that's the first thing a government agency's got to do if they want to be competitive. Data-driven recruiting strategy. Doug did a fabulous job explaining the value of having those metrics and understanding what you're doing, why you're doing it. And specifically identifying the targeted schools. So in our office, our philosophy is that every single school has a percentage of talent. Arguably, some schools have a higher percentage than others, but we believe it's there in every school. So we actually do a mass posting, just about every possible school around. Now our efforts, we're much more strategic in our additional efforts as far as info sessions and participating in career fairs and such. Depending on the ROI at the particular campuses. But that's a real critical piece. This part, I think, is, for me, is one of the most important things. So, and I know when I took over recruiting, it's something I did internally. really understanding what does talent mean. So who all watched Moneyball, the movie Moneyball? Most of us have seen that. I'm reminded of that movie, and I loved it when Brad Pitt, he's interviewing or surveying the scouts, and he's saying, okay, so what kind of criteria do you guys use when you're picking players? One guy says, well, I look for those players with the chiseled jaw. So that's a sign to me that they're going to be a good ball player. Okay, there was one even better yet. Some other gentleman says, scout, he says, well, for me, I look at their girlfriends. If they have a hot girlfriend, they're going to be a great player. Okay, probably in the government sector, this is not the criteria you want to use for identifying talent. What we did, and what I would recommend anybody do, is actually conduct a survey of your management and ask them. So within our organization, unit, agency, how do we define talent? So let's look at our most successful employees and what are those characteristics common to those successful employees. And kind of hitting on Doug's point, it's not always the GPA. So those of us who are using a GPA to filter out candidates, guess what? You're probably filtering out talent. So you need to know what those characteristics are, and then you create a tool or use a tool that's going to measure and filter candidates based on those characteristics. And those are the processes you want to incorporate. Create a work environment and culture that attracts and retains talented folks. So once you know what talent is, you can build that. And most of us will say, okay, we have a balanced work life. We offer a balanced work life. And you'll hear that in the government community. What does balanced mean? So if you ask some folks, they'll say, well, balanced in our shop's 50 hours a week. Oh, okay. So you have to be specific about what balance is and make sure you're communicating that message to the candidates so they understand what they're signing on for. And is it really 40 or 50 hours a week? Because maybe that's not what the talent wants. I've actually heard a lot of students say, you know what, to me it's not so much the hours, it's the flexibility. In fact, I'll give you 10 hours a day if you let me go home, work out, and then I'll put in a couple hours after that. So for our office, by the way, that isn't something you can do. To the point of retaining employees, we want to make sure we're walking the walk. So we do talk about a balanced lifestyle. And in fact, you can't work unauthorized overtime. We call it underground overtime, and you'll be counseled for that because we want to protect that. We want to make sure that we're walking the walk, and that is part of what our folks are signing on for because, like Stephen said, we don't have the most competitive salaries. We do within the government sector, but quite frankly, we're trying to compete for the same level of talent that you in the private sector are competing for. So we're going after the same pool. The other point on the talent that I would also throw in there is look at your minimum qualifications, especially if you're walking into the position of recruiting manager and they're going to say, well, these are the MQs for the position. Normally, you're just going to buy into it. Oh, okay, great. Find out how long have you been using that posting. Oh, well, that thing's 30 years old. Really? Do you know there's other majors out there since you posted? So I would kind of go back to the drawing board with the position. And we've done that ourselves. And we looked at, the kinds of majors. Are those really the majors? Are we going to keep it that exclusive? So a number of years ago, and I actually got the idea from one of my friends, I think Stephanie in the audience there with BDO. I said, what are some of the other majors? By the way, this is one of your best resources, our people. So what are some of the other majors you guys use in the consulting industry? So econ, we use econ majors. I said, oh, that's great. So we look at the curriculum for econ majors. Guess what? Made a case to management, let's add econ majors. What happens the next year as we bring on econ majors? Any guess? More often than not, they're my rookies of the year. So anyways, question the minimum qualifications and make sure they're really tying to those skills, knowledge, and abilities required for that position. One thing I wanted to share with you, so as I was preparing for this presentation, my wife's sitting in the kitchen, and I look over at her, and I said, honey, in your wildest dreams, would you ever have imagined I'd get so entrenched in recruiting? I'm just kind of giving her one of these, right? She walks over to me, puts her hands on my cheeks, and she says, I hate to say this, honey, you're not in my wildest dreams. That's the story of my life. So anyways, as far as educating the best and the brightest about your agency, the information that you're putting out there to the students and your candidates, you want to make sure it's striking a chord with them. So in our case, you'll see all over our literature, make a difference. And it's legit. We really believe that we make a difference. So if you're part of a team looking at high-speed rail, when that project's implemented and hopefully years from now you're sitting on the high-speed rail, you're going to be able to kind of feel good about it, and that's the message we're trying to present to our candidates. So you want to find out what is the message wherever you're at, where you can get them to buy into what you're doing. And if some of you, if it is just programming, it's not about programming. Really, what's the vision, the mission for your agency? So make that connection. One of the tools that we've used that has been probably the most powerful recruiting tool are these hands-on workshops. So I'll go into like Berkeley's Masters in Public Policy program, take over the class for the day, and roll out a performance audit. So a performance audit is where there's some alleged mismanagement the legislature is concerned about, and I'll distribute to all the students some of the actual letters, so from the legislator who requested the audit, and they'll say, this is the allegation, this is the concern, knowing that this is the concern, and these are the facts, how'd you go about trying to solve this problem? And what would your strategy look like? And we'll spend the session brainstorming, coming up with ideas. All the while, I'm really not recruiting, am I? Indirectly, I am. So at the end of the workshop, I'll say, and by the way, those of you who enjoyed this is what we do. Welcome to performance auditing, which is about 2/3 of what we do. I'm going to stick around if you want to chat with me, and I'll tell you what, I get a flock. They all come up to me. Some of them come and say, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I don't think I could hang with this every day, and I have to assure them, no, this was a challenging one. But there are others who are like, yeah, I'm totally brain fried, and that's what I want. That's actually what I'm looking for, that kind of challenge. How do I apply? I've got my materials there, and I run them through the gauntlet. Walk the walk. So when you look at your hiring processes, especially in the government circles, this is classic. And I'll take a dig at some of my government recruiting counterparts, because within their own shops, they will be very efficient and very effective about their work products. And then they'll say, so go ahead and apply with us, and then you might hear from us within 9 months to a year. What the heck? You can't do that. Talent is not going to stick around. So, I challenge my counterparts in the government agencies, and they actually are working towards this. There's a department, human resources department, that they're re-engineering to tackle this issue. So take note, private sector, they're coming. They are going to be streamlining. They do want to be able to walk the walk, and they want to be able to do that with their processes. And we were somewhat guilty of it ourselves. So about a year ago, we went digital. So everything from our application, it's now online. They can apply 24/7. We'll review the application for MQs. One of our performance measures is to get back with them within 2 days. If they meet those MQs, we invite them to take our exam. You'll always hear about an exam in the government circles. Exam for us, again, they can take it 24/7. Consists of 75 multiple choice questions. And a lot of you are like, oh yeah, I could do that in my sleep. This thing is very, very challenging. A lot of analytical, case study kinds of questions. Those who are successful with the exam, same thing. We'll get back to them within a couple days, invite them to take our writing assessment, give them a password. The writing assessment is also online, so they can take that online. One of the things that we're trying to do as much as possible is keep putting the ball in their court. So specifically with the writing assessment, they have up to 2 weeks. So some of them will knock it out that night. Others will wait until the 14th day, and that's okay. So we don't want to be the ones who are criticized for dragging our feet. So we'll keep putting the ball back in their court. If they do well with the writing assessment, we'll call them up. We'll say, hey, we want to bring you in for a hiring interview. Some will jump on it. Yeah, I'd love to come in next week. Others will say, hey, I've got school going on, so on. I can't do it for another month. That's fine. We're working around their schedules. They're kind of steering that ship. And that's the position we want to be in as far as streamlining. When it comes to correspondence, you want to personalize as much as possible. give you guys a little context. So this is easy for our shop to do, but I have to tell you, there's some agencies where, like a Caltrans, they could post an exam. They might have 2,500 people take the exam. I mean, just, all in one day. It's craziness. So that's their challenge in trying to create those filters. And I think more and more, it'll just have to be digital just to keep things moving along. And I know many government agencies are so guilty of those form letters, dear interested applicant. Oh, that's a real feel-good letter, isn't it? I'm just one of thousands. So if you're using databases, take the time, personalize it, put the name in there, actually sign the letter if you can, depending on the volume. This bullet here about being empathetic and providing feedback. So those candidates whom I've met, or if they take the time to reach out to me or my recruiting team, we will give them feedback as to how they did, or where they, especially those who haven't done well, how they could improve upon it. Also, those who have done well, we'll share with them. Guess what? Yeah, you did well, but you squeaked it. Here are two things where you barely made it. We'll share that with our candidates. Why not? Reason why I think that's important is let them improve upon themselves. They can reapply a year later, and guess what? Many of them reapply, and they're now my colleagues, and they're on board working with me now. So it's a living candidate pool. Read in the paper just a few days ago, Warren Buffett, and he's been giving back all his money and to the charities, and now he's espousing some advice. And I thought it was really kind of hit home. He said, whatever you do, make sure you're passionate about it. And I know that's a message a lot of us deliver to our candidates, so we're really good at doing that. But I think we also need to remind ourselves, hey, by the way, we've got like one of the best jobs in the world. We're recruiters, we're dream makers, right? So let's be passionate about it, and remember that when you are out there recruiting. Thank you. I think we still have time for some questions, Stephen. All right. Any questions? Yes.
Y'all come with the mic.
Okay, so the withdrawal rate.
So again, the question is, what is your withdrawal rate of candidates at the application process and then at the testing process?
Okay. So at the withdrawal rate at the application stage, we lose about 25%. And we're out there in the fall hitting it really hard. And I think what happens, I just mentioned to you earlier, we're going after the same candidates as Big Four and such. We want talent. And so I think, yes, we become a safety employer for some candidates. The other thing, too, I also think some of the talent, they're so good that they're getting the offers before we're even done in the process, and we just can't go any more quickly than we can. We can fast track somebody once they're on board with us, and I think that's a real important thing for an agency to be able to do. So promote based on performance, not seniority, and we do that, and we will move somebody along very quickly. But unfortunately, we can't. Oh, here's a candidate. Let's treat them differently. We have to be very consistent in how we treat them. So, and then you mentioned on the hiring phase. So after they've had their hiring interview. So the initial exam? Oh, okay. Well, I can tell you, all in all, we lose about a third total, are withdrawing, so for many reasons. And we do take the time we'll ask them, especially if we're connecting with them. And more often than not, they've accepted another offer. It's like, oh, man. Yeah, it's painful. I hate it. Yes?
You talked about being empathetic, and sometimes candidates do meet the minimum quals, but you just don't have enough openings.
Right.
So how can you respond to their emails or their follow-ups? Like, I'm still interested if there's new positions, and you just don't have any, or you
Right.
don't know if you're going to have any for a period of months, but they keep following up, and you want to represent yourself well and your brand, but you just don't have any new information to tell them.
Right. I'd be cautious about what you're putting in an email. So I would invite them in the email. Feel free to follow up with me. I'll give you any ideas, any suggestions. about what's happening in our company, I take it a step further. I'll actually say I've got a network, so things like LinkedIn, I've got a network. Feel free to reach out to me. I can let you know who else is hiring. I have to tell you, you're like, no, but that could be one of my hires. It's going to look so great for you and your company that you're not being selfish about the pool. I'll also do it when I'm doing info sessions. Say I'm in SoCal, and at the end of the day, a lot of the folks down there, they're like, you know what, I'm not ready for NorCal. Hey, no problem. I've got connections down here. And guess what? Some of them will take those jobs in SoCal, and then I'll hear from them 2 years later. Hey, this isn't quite playing out the way I thought. So I think that piece is really important. And the other reason why I suggest not including it all in an email is let them jump through a hurdle as well. They need to put some effort in it. And then that way you can have a phone call with them and you can make it that conversation geared specifically to them and how you can help them out.
I have one too. What ways have you streamlined the process? Over here.
Where I'm like, where am I?
Over here.
Oh, okay.
So, what ways have you streamlined the process? Because you said, you keep losing offers, or throughout the whole process, immigration or the, application process, interviewing process. So, what ways can you share with us that you have streamlined the process to
Right.
make it a little bit faster?
Okay. So it's, for the most part, it's that exam being online. Now, you guys think about this, what we're giving up by doing that. This is huge. And I'll survey you when I'm done explaining to you. So your candidate has applied online through your application. You've seen their application and attached resume. They meet your MQs. It's totally objective. Yes, go ahead and take our exam. This is a pass-fail. And quite frankly, it's brutal. So we'll have maybe a third will move on from the exam. So it's a totally objective piece. And if you think about that, what I love about it is at the end of the day, when you look around, anybody and those who've been hired, it wasn't a subjective hire. It's like we know everybody in this group can bring it. And within I won't survey because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but if you think about that, what we're giving up, so we just said no to 2/3 of the population before we even talked to them. But what it does, it's very objective. We know, by the way, these questions all tie to the knowledge, skills, and abilities required of the position. And that's how important it is to us. So that's really, I'd say, what's kind of allowed us, boom, just like that, instead of having to schedule. We used to do, there were about 45-minute interviews per qualified candidate. So anybody who met the MQs, we had to do a first-round interview. We could do it over the phone or in person. And on our end, it required 2 of us. It was a huge resource. But anyways, does that kind of explain it? Yes? Yes.
Faster than before, because that's what we experience at Intel too, that once we get them on board, the interviewing process sometimes is slow, and we're trying to get managers, okay, you have to interview faster, you have to make a decision faster, because then you have competing offers, and then it brings it back to us. You must
Right.
deliver this offer immediately because they have 3 or 4 offers out the door.
So what we've done, you have to get buy-in from the highest level folks. So we have the state auditor, chief deputy, and then there's 3 deputies. 2 of the deputies, they're part of the recruiting team. So they understand how important it is, and they're conducting interviews 4 days a week, not full time, but they've got interview slots that are open. And by the way, we pounce on those, we fill them up, we take advantage of it. So part of it, they also have a stake in it, and when we're celebrating all our hires, they are celebrating it as well, like they're part of that team. So I think that would be my recommendation in your case, because they're also as anxious as we are. And after they interview somebody in a final hiring interview, they'll circle back right away like, yeah, that was awesome, that person's great, let's get the offer out right away. So we'll call usually the next day if somebody's really, really good. Another one over there.
Well, last question.
Okay.
So you talked about providing feedbacks. This is one of the questions that we get all the time, but as much as I want to, we're not able to provide that because of time and the volume that we have, and also what we can share and what we can't. How is your team able to manage this?
So what I do is when I provide feedback, I'm not going to go through the whole instrument. So And again, I would respond with an email. So I wouldn't sit there and personally call everybody. Respond with an email. And if they say, yeah, I'd love some feedback, schedule a time that's going to work for you. Okay, it looks like Friday between 10 and 11, I've got an open slot. Give me a call. Put the onus on them again. Some of them won't call. But the fact is, you're inviting that and allowing it. And then that conversation, what it looks like when they call me, so I've already got their file, I'll say, look, I'm not going to go through the whole thing with you. I'm going to tell you, here's the one area where you really dropped the ball. And what I think they like about it too, and what I think is really defensible about it, because the minute I start going through that, they're like, yeah, I know, I totally knew it. I knew it was going to be that. And it's great, because then they actually feel good about it. Like, okay, I knew I was on thin ice in that section. You kind of corroborated what I thought had happened. So it actually ends up being a real positive conversation. And then I'll tell them, by the way, next year, we've got some really ambitious hiring goals. Based on, I don't tell everybody this, but I'll say, based on what I'm seeing here, if you can learn from this lesson, I encourage you to go for it next year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Awesome.
everybody.